How you guys doing today? Welcome back to another video. Now, obviously I do very Doctor Who centric videos, however I haven't really done that many figure reviews on stuff from the past, and instead of reviewing figures from the past, I thought I'd do a video today talking about character options and the articulation that they've used over the years. So we're going to be looking at each of these figures that are in front of you here and comparing the difference in the articulation that they've used and comparing it to the 13th Doctor. If you haven't seen my review of the 13th Doctor action figure, head over to the channel and see it there. Doctor Who has been brought back to BBC One by Russell T Davies, and as much as the show's doing fantastic, they've decided to release a line of merchandise. This is the first action figure of Christopher Eccleston that we saw as the 9th Doctor. Of course, he hasn't got any of his accessories in, but let's just take a look at the articulation that they chose to use on this figure. One of the first and most immediate articulations that you can see is his head. You can see that it does slightly move, however it can't really do the full 360, even though it's supposed to, as it does slightly get hindered by the jacket. His arm is capable of doing a 360 degree at the shoulder, 90 degrees at the elbow, and no wrist articulation at all. Moving down, his waist can swivel slightly, as well as being able to kick forward and back with both legs. But it's worth pointing out with this figure that there is no knee joint, as this figure comes pre-posed. So for a 2005 action figure, this figure is very limited on the articulation. Let's take a look at the Rose figure that they released a little bit after, once Christopher Eccleston had left the show. You can see here from this figure of Rose from the episode New Earth that she is clearly got a bit of lack of articulation, but we're going to take a closer look at that, as this is the second figure of Rose that we got. The first one was already pre-posed of her in the red jacket, like the Christopher Eccleston figure we just looked at. So first of all, her head can do the full 360 degrees, but is slightly hindered by the hair. Her arm is capable of going 360 degrees at the shoulder, however it's worth noting that there is no elbow articulation. In addition to this, it's worth noting that there is no wrist articulation either. Moving down, this figure is capable of doing the full 360 degrees at the waist, being able to kick forward and backwards and do the splits. This figure is also capable of doing the 90 degree bend at the knee, unlike the previous Christopher Eccleston figure. However, it's also worth pointing out that there is no foot articulation. However, this can be forgiven judging by the sort of pants the figure is wearing. So, comparing this to the Christopher Eccleston figure we just looked at, they've kept the head the same, they've kept the shoulders the same, however they've lost the elbow joints, added knee joints, and the rest is the same. Let's take a look at the second version of the 9th Doctor figure that was released. So you can see here that this is another version of the 9th Doctor. You can clearly tell that it's different judging by one, the different coloured shirt, which we're not looking at the detail in this, we're clearly just looking at the articulation and comparing it how it's changed by character options over the years and what they might do in the future. So let's take a look at the articulation on this figure. First of all, they have kept that same 360 degree swivel at the neck. Again, is still hindered by the leather jacket. That can be forgiven just by how the leather jacket is. It's also worth noting that this is the figure that was released with the 11th Doctor's pack, so all the ones in that were relatively the same. It's also, you can also see here, his shoulder can do the full 360 degrees. Here they have also added a bicep swivel 360 degrees. He's also capable of bending it 90 degrees at the elbow, and also on this there is slight wrist articulation. Moving down, this figure can do the full 360 degrees at the waist. It can do the 90 degree bend at the knee, but it's worth noting there is no thigh articulation as of yet. And finally, there is no foot articulation at all. So this is the 9th Doctor figure. It came with the 11th Doctor set. It probably isn't the next one that was released, however you can see that there is a difference in the articulation. Some for the better, some still lacking a little bit of articulation. Anyway, let's regenerate the 9th Doctor and take a look at the 10th Doctor. Immediately, you can see here that the Doctor has suddenly changed. I'm only kidding, that was just a bit of a joke for the video. But let's actually take a look at the articulation on this 10th Doctor figure. First of all, I would like to point out this is a version of the 10th Doctor figure which is supposed to have glasses on. However, his glasses have broken off on mine by the lack of stability that the character options put in the figure when it was released. The head can do the full 360 degrees and is hindered a lot less by the coat, unlike the 9th Doctor. Again, this figure can do the 360 degrees at the shoulder. It can do the 90-degree bend at the elbow. However, it's worth pointing out that this is actually different plastic used for the hand and isn't really capable of swiveling a wrist. Moving down, this figure is not capable of doing any waist articulation. However, it is capable of kicking forward slightly and kicking backwards, but not that well. It can also do the splits. A 90-degree bend at the knee, which is hindered by the coat, so it can't go that far back. And no thigh articulation as of yet, and also no foot articulation. Again, has the same problem as the Rose figure. So for articulation, this figure has lost the bicep ability. Again, we still don't have ball jointed arms. We don't have that much leg articulation, and we also lost the waist ability. Let's zip back in time to World War II and take a look at one of the most historical figures of all time. Fight them on the beaches! Anyway guys, so here we have the Winston Churchill action figure. This was released as part of a Victory of the Daleks set. Again, a great figure and a good addition to the collection from when Winston Churchill was in the episode. Let's take a look at the articulation they used on him and compare it to the 10th Doctor and the other figures that we've looked at. Immediately, his head can turn from side to side, but it can't do the full 360 degrees, judging by the size of the bulkiness of the figure. It just gets hindered by the coat. His arm is on a ball joint, so it can go out, as well as doing the full 360 degrees. This is the first time that we've actually seen a ball jointed figure in the figures that we're looking at today. Again, the actual ball joint wasn't actually added until the 11th Doctor action figures with the blue shirt. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was when it was added. In addition to the ball joint on the shoulder, we also have the 360 degrees at the bicep, 90-degree bend at the elbow, and 360 degrees at the wrist. Moving down, we have a slight side-to-side waist articulation. However, that's it for this figure. Judging just by the bulkiness of it, it would have been nice if his legs moved, but instead he has to waddle. Overall, out of the figures that we've looked at so far, this figure has more upper body articulation than the previous ones, and you can see that there is definitely a bit of things changing. Let's take a look at another version of the Doctor, the War Doctor. No more. Anyway guys, so this is the John Hurt version of the War Doctor. Of course, John Hurt was the only actor to play the War Doctor, probably ever will be. He's such a phenomenal actor. It was great to have him in the 50th. This is the action figure they released as a limited edition of the War Doctor before they added him to the 13 Doctors set. Let's take a look at the articulation they included on this figure. His head can move from side to side. It would do the 360 degrees. However, because it's removable to swap the 8th Doctor's head, it's hindered by the scarf. His arm is on a ball joint and is capable of doing the full 360 degrees, as well as going out so he can regenerate. This figure also includes that bicep articulation that we saw on Winston Churchill, but we haven't seen on any of the other figures other than the 9th Doctor yet. He's also got that 90-degree bend at the elbow, as well as a slight wrist movement. Moving down, this figure has the waist swivel that can do a full 360 degrees. The legs are possible to do the splits, as well as kick forward and backwards, as well as doing a 90-degree bend at the knee. This figure also has the ability to swivel 360 degrees at the boot. However, again, we still don't have any foot articulation other than the boot. It's also worth noting that we actually lost the ability of the thigh swivel, which we haven't actually seen on any of the figures yet. So here she is, the newest version of the Doctor. Let's take a look at the articulation that she's got compared to the others. Immediately, the first thing is the fact that her head's on a ball joint, so she can do the full 360 degrees. The coat doesn't hinder it. She can nod her head back and forth, as well as slightly side to side. This is a great addition and should definitely be kept for future editions of this figure and any other action figures to do with Doctor Who. However, with this being the newest figure released by Character Options, you would expect that they would have kept the ball jointed arms so that we could have her regenerate. However, instead they haven't and just gone with the 10th Doctor and 9th Doctor style 360 degree swivel at the shoulder. We did, however, get to keep the 360 degrees swivel at the bicep, 90 degree bend at the elbow, and again, slight wrist articulation. We've also got the 360 degree swivel at the waist, the ability to kick forward and backwards as well as do the splits. However, it's worth noting we have lost the lack of the thigh articulation, which wasn't actually seen on any recent figures. Again, we did get to keep the 90 degree bend at the knee. However, we lost the ability for any foot articulation. I could understand if it was a boot and they'd have put it further up, but they haven't. This is just a small little boot and they were very lazy and didn't have any articulation. They could have had it swivel from the leg there, but again, they didn't. So that's it for the articulation of these figures. You can see I have actually added the 3rd Doctor in the background, and the only reason I've done that is because he does actually have thigh articulation. I will show you that in a second, but let's just talk about the articulation that these figures have used. As you can see, we did get the ball jointed arms with the War Doctor, but we lost it with the newest Doctor. Don't we want her to regenerate? The 12th Doctor action figure has ball jointed arms. They've clearly gone back in time. I just hope this is a prototype so they can see what does and doesn't work. Let's hope with the next release of the 13th Doctor action figure, they actually add ball jointed arms and a little bit more articulation to the legs. Maybe a ankle articulation or a thigh articulation, as well as a different hand sculpt so that she can actually point the Sonic forward. Just to show you, this figure does actually do the 360 degree thigh swivel as well as the 90 degree bend at the knee. However, it doesn't have the boot articulation like the War Doctor. So that's it for this video, guys. Are Character Options taking a step forward? Yes. They finally got ball jointed heads, which does actually look really good, and I would say it is a plus, so long as it's removable with a swappable head so we can do the regeneration. Let's hope that they actually manage to allow us to have ball jointed arms so that we can regenerate the 13th Doctor if we choose so, from the 12th to the 13th. Maybe they'll even do a regeneration version of the figure. Would we like to see more leg articulation? Yes. However, the articulation has always been a bit back and forth. Let's hope they'll finally get it right with the next release of an action figure. Let's hope they keep the ball jointed head, they give ball jointed arms, they give us legs that kick backwards forward, keep the waist articulation, keep the knee articulation, give us another thigh swivel, and maybe a bit of boot articulation. Other than that, let's see what Character Options do in the future. Let's just hope they're taking a step in the right direction. I definitely say the 13th Doctor is a look towards an upside of the future for Character Options action figures. Thanks for watching, guys. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button below, leave a like as well to show your appreciation for Character Options and their Doctor Who figures as well as my videos. And of course, don't forget, if you haven't already, go over to the doc11th.dizzyjam.com and get your midnight merch. It's fantastic. There's some new stuff coming out soon. I'll see you guys in my next video. Goodbye for now, guys. Goodbye.